Hey, welcome back, Liz. How you doing?
Hello. I'm recovering. I'm recovering from the library conference.
Well, tell us about the library conference. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
great. And then also we did something in between. We did a thing, right?
right,
We did a
right.
thing.
So we've all got our books. Yeah, we've got our book, Author Adventure, Five Secrets to Success, The Art and Business of Publishing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We'll talk about that a little bit toward the end. But let's talk a little bit about the library conference. So
Yeah.
we went to Austin with 8 of our authors, and so Kathleen and Ed came down from Philadelphia. Kathleen has been on the show. She has the hip hop series of children's books about Froggy T and Bunny, and so she's got 2 more of her books produced, and so she is starting to do book signings, and she's doing the audio books now. So she's chosen talent. She's chosen a voice for Bunny, a lady, and a man for Froggy T. And I know that they were going to be doing some book signings up in Philadelphia in the next couple of weeks. And so Kathleen was very excited to have them as their voice talent join her.
Yeah.
And so, for those of you that are listening, those are some other opportunities. I mean, we always start people with an ebook and then the paperback or then the hardback, then an audio book or animation. If you're got or coloring books, if you're got a children's book, we always want to do a companion coloring book. And you can see those behind me over here. This is our McCleo Hearn, Mr. Black Cowboy, and the yellow one's the children's book, and the green one's a coloring book. So it's basically the same story, but kids can color in their own version of it. And so, but those are kind of the other revenue streams, if you will. And then
Yeah.
obviously audio book, animation. If you've got a children's book, you can do a short film, basically what would be considered a short film. Kathleen has that. So she was there. Wild Bill, he's not really Wild Bill, but he kind of is. Bill Carl, the Reverend Dr. William J. Carl, the former pastor who's written this Assassin's Manuscript spy thriller. And I think Bill had a good time. He came in from Tennessee, so that was fun. So they were our out of state group this year. Last year we had someone from New York and South Dakota. And so we're just moving across the state here. And then the rest of us were from Dallas, except for Russ. Russ, I guess, obviously from Phoenix, but he's visiting family in Texas. And so let's see. I guess Beth was there with her bath
Yes.
book. I
Beth
was
was there.
there with my cowboy books and our author book. G.E. Johnson was there with her civil rights and kind of social justice from the civil rights in the 60s and growing up in that atmosphere and working as the first white teacher in a black school district. And then her mission trip that she was a
Yeah.
reluctant missionary. And then Brian, our horror friend, was there with us. So Brian's been on this show. So if you want to see any of those interviews, just go back to our YouTube channel. Those interviews are there. We're into episode 35, 36 here. And so those other 34 episodes you can find at our YouTube channel. We hope you'll go and subscribe. And, who else are they going to hear? Who else have we interviewed,
Well,
Russ?
we actually had
Yeah.
Mary join us. We
Yeah.
actually had Mary. She joined us, but her book is in progress. So we're going through the process of getting her book launched. So you're doing some work with her as well. So
Yeah, looking for that illustrator. And that's always the hardest thing with children's
yeah,
books, is finding a good illustrator and finding a match for the story. That's probably the most difficult thing in publishing besides just selling your books, I
yeah.
think probably. So that's right. Mary was
Well, it's
there.
getting the content correct and finding the resources available, because not every, I mean, we have relationships with illustrators, and not every illustrator is a good fit for the author. So we have
Right.
to match those individuals up. So that's always a challenge.
Yeah, that's the thing. So that is our challenge right now. So we've got a couple of challenges. We're actually in the second book with Carol, and we've got a similar challenge. We got the first one done, and the gentleman that did that's got a new job, and now he's working full time, and he feels overwhelmed, and he doesn't feel like he can take on anything else. And so sometimes that happens to you. Sometimes, and then it becomes harder because you're trying to match something you've already got, and that's a little harder than going from scratch. But it was a great time. I mean, there were a lot of people there. We didn't talk to quite as many people as I hoped to talk to. We probably talked to 4 or 5 times as many people in Fort Worth, so
Yeah.
that was kind of interesting to me. I mean, I think the people we actually did talk to were good connections, and I think everybody got at least, something. Like Bill was talking to a guy who said, I know a producer who might produce your show as a movie.
So
Well,
what do you attribute that to, Liz? What after you had a chance to reflect on it, what do you attribute to? Is it
you
just
know, I think it may just be Austin. I think the fact that Austin's kind of a party town. Austin has had some issues in the past with homelessness and a lot of people on the streets. And, traditionally librarians are pretty much women,
Mhm.
older women, and so they may be a little more leery about going somewhere. It's a little bit harder to get in and out because, it's just kind of a
Quite a bit of
compact.
construction around it as well?
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
lots of construction. It's very compact. The streets are very close together. It's not maybe as spread out as some other things. And I think the fact that they have neighborhoods rather than cities, in North Texas, the thing about Dallas Fort Worth is, yes, we have huge Dallas Fort Worth communities, but we also have huge suburbs around us.
Hmm.
And each of those suburbs are an independent city. So those independent cities have a public library and a school system. So we have like a Mesquite, Box Springs, Mesquite, Garland, Richardson, Plano, Irving, Grand Prairie, Coppell, Grapevine, and then it goes all over the Fort Worth, Denton, and Hershey, Euless, Bedford, and then across the south, Duncanville, DeSoto, Arlington, and Mansfield. And so those are independent cities. So I think they just generate more people,
Yeah.
rather than Austin, who maybe has branch libraries, but they're all from that one community. They're not from different cities. And so as many people don't need to go and get information, they don't have as many people, in other words, I think. So,
Well,
Houston.
the other thing I was thinking about as I was coming back here is the idea that a lot of individuals have not had to be at a conference for some time now.
Right.
And so coming back and being a little bit comfortable with not having to attend and having to now change that focus, and all of a
Right.
sudden, you know, lodging, parking, construction, traffic, all of these things. It's really a challenge at times to get to a location, and unless you're
Right.
really enthusiastic about it, some people may choose not to go.
Right. And obviously, COVID has held them off, and they haven't done it for a couple of years. And so, and the reason I wanted to go again, because we did go 4 or 5 years ago, but they had it like a week before Easter. And so
Yeah,
I assumed that they had a lighter attendance because of Easter. But it may just be that it's Austin, and
it's just
maybe
Austin.
Austin and Austin in April is not necessarily a great time. Maybe there's too much else going on. You're coming into spring, summer, and people want to be outside, or they want to be eating and drinking and being merry, and they're not, they're not as worried about professional and all of that kind of stuff. So
Well,
we'll see. But
they rotate it every year, don't they?
yeah, they rotate it to different cities. So I think actually next year it'll be in San Antonio, and then it'll either go back to Dallas. I think it'll go back to Dallas and then Houston. It was supposed to be in Houston last year, but because of COVID, they ended up not having it because we had the resurgence of COVID. And or maybe it was the previous year it was supposed to be in Houston. They didn't have, but
Right.
we've attended in Dallas, we've attended San Antonio and Fort Worth, and those were all fabulous times. We talked to lots of librarians. I mean, I would say hundreds of people. We got their names, their cards, and we didn't have as much of that going on this year as we have in the past. And it seemed that we had more school librarians, elementary, so the people with children's books maybe had a better shot than adult librarians or some of the fiction and nonfiction, adult market. So,
Yeah.
although, Bill and GE both sold, and Brian has a series of books because he's been publishing for years. So he's got about 8 or 10 books. So he gave away his books. And so,
Hmm.
you can do that when you have more books. But if you've only got one book,
Yeah.
you can't hardly give away your one book.
Well, and I think it was really good for the authors to meet each other because we've
Yeah,
had them on the show. We've been able to, build relationships with them,
right.
and I think everybody really enjoyed it and had a great time. So it was
Yeah,
nice to
and
meet
that's the
everybody.
main thing. Yeah, and everybody ought to go at least once, and experience it. But I think for us, it probably the relationship experience and the opportunity to be together as a group was much more important than maybe actually connecting with somebody that might buy our book one day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, we just established that stronger relationship, and how can we support each other and help each other and cross promote and do those kinds of things. So I think
Well, and
that was a very good thing.
as well as anyone, relationships, you're just one conversation away from, meeting somebody or
Right. Yeah.
introducing or, connecting, making those connections. So, just
Right. Well,
continue
I think
to
Beth
do it.
got a job offer. I think Beth got a
Yes.
job offer from one of the other vendors. And, like I say, Kathleen and them were, asked to be on the show. And Bill maybe got this connection. And I certainly, talked to a couple of people where we may go and speak, and because of the Black History thing and Black Cowboys, because most of them have never seen anything like that before, and so it was great fun. And then we got to introduce our author adventure book, and so before we do go leave today, I did want to kind of some of the contents and want to
Yeah,
tell people.
let's talk about this author adventure thing we got going on.
Yeah, so tell people where they can buy this book, and they can get from us too. So we need to, I don't know how we want to do that, but take somebody's email, or now that we got books in our hands, we could actually ship ourselves or hand off or
Yeah.
drop in the mail. So if you
Yeah.
want
Connect with us.
if you want an autographed copy, buy it from us. If you don't care about that, then you can just go to Amazon.com, type in Russ's name or my name, and the author adventure 5 secrets, and it should come up. So tell the people a little bit about what's in the book, Russ. I'm doing
Yeah.
all the
Well,
talking today.
well, this is a process that has been proven over decades of experience. This is something that you started years ago, and
Mhm.
I'm just kind of following along and helping out with some technology that, in the marketing area here. But, the table of context tells it all. The whole thing is how to get started in writing a book. If you have an inclination or you have any idea that you want to publish, Liz has published multiple books. She's helped multiple authors get to number one and get their book published in the marketplace as well. So you have years of experience. And I've been doing technology for decades as well. So between the two of us, we have it covered. But, there's how to get the most out of this book, and then, have a dream, make sure that the dream is something that you're interested in pursuing, because there are some steps along the way that you may be challenged, right, Liz?
Right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
gotta love it. And you're also gonna live with it a long time. And we often tell people that, people say, well, what do I write about? Well, write about something that you love, because you're gonna live with it a year, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, I've got a book that my very first book, I still sell that book and it's 30 years later. Well, if I
Well,
didn't like
the other thing about that too is that ties into the next chapter is conquering your fears, because once you put ink to paper and you put a shit out to the world,
yeah.
you no longer have control over that content, and you have to face the fear of being out there in the public world as well. So talk a little bit about that as well,
Well,
Liz.
and it really is like your baby. A book is like a child to you, and you are nervous about putting it out there and letting people read it and see it and think about it. And a lot of us are perfectionists. We want it to be as good as it can be, but there's good enough.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to write like Bill did 12 revisions of his book and GE did one. And he was just astonished that she only edited one time.
Yeah.
But then he started reading the book and he went, God, this is a really great sentence, and this is a really great sentence. And so, everybody's different,
Yeah.
and so, she only kind of had one or two storylines running. Bill had like multiple storylines running at the same time. And when you've got something like that, it does take more revision. It does take more years to get it done. But it really shouldn't take you 10, 12, 20, 30 years. You should
No,
be
no.
able.
But that brings us to the next chapter is, the purpose and the ideal audience, because that really defines how you write your book and what you want to pursue in terms of the topic, the voice, the opportunities that you can present in that book, and make sure that there's a foundation in place, and it's consistent throughout the book as well. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how that fits
Yeah, and
together.
then it's really about marketing. Okay, we're coming
Uh-huh.
back to that marketing thing that nobody wants to talk about. That's your favorite thing. That's kind of a little bit my favorite thing, but you can't market to everybody. Even if your book is for everybody and everybody might like your book,
Yeah.
you don't have enough money to market to everybody. So that's why you've got to choose what we call a primary and secondary market.
Uh-huh.
Who do you want to help the most? Maybe you want to help single mothers. Maybe you want to help, seniors. Maybe you want to help kids, whatever it is. Maybe you want to, maybe your stuff has a theological or a spiritual or a theme to it. And you want to target those people because, like you say, a 50-year-old farmer or truck driver is not getting his information in the same way as a new mother, a 30-year-old or 25
Sure.
or 30-year-old mother, female. They're just not. They're not in the same places. They're not communicating and getting their information from the same places. And so that's why you've got to target your audience. And
Well, and also
you
also
write
about that.
better.
Yeah, and also with that, who can you add the most value to with your topic and your subject and your message? Because like you just said, the mother and the truck driver or anybody out there, they're receptive to different topics. They're receptive to different messages. So
Yeah.
who can you add the most value to? Because that's really what it's about. But the secret number one that we talk about in the 5 secrets is creating your book, and dive into that a little bit and what that means, Liz, because I think I want to make sure that everybody understands where this is coming from.
Well, and originally we called it writing your book, but today you don't have to even write. You don't have to be a good writer, you know? So that's why we call it creating your book, because sometimes people journal. Sometimes people come from a journalism background like me, so they can ask that who, what, when, where, why, how kind of thing, kind of a journalistic approach. Some people don't write well, but they interview people. Or they can, you know, go out and get other experts and talk to them and get information from them and write their chapters based on that. Or they can record those people and then pull the transcripts. So there are a lot of different ways to write, and nobody does it the same way. And so that's why we call it creating your book, because like we talked about earlier, you can do an ebook, a paperback, an audio. You can start with any of those versions that you want to, depending on your audience. I mean, if you've got a younger audience and you know that all they do is listen to audio books, you know, or maybe they're business owners, small business owners, entrepreneurs, that's a huge market for audiobooks, because that's the only time they have. They're listening while they're working out or while they're driving or something. And that's about the only time they have an opportunity to get educated, you know, because they're busy in their business the rest of the time. So it really depends, you know. That's why your audience is so important. And when you focus on someone, the more you can identify, we call it an avatar. It's an audience avatar. You give that person a name, you figure out how old they are, what their income level is, what their education is, what their hobbies are. Because when you write to that person, it's a more intimate experience.
Yeah.
And people
Which brings
feel
us
it
to
in the writing.
Which, moving along, because we're running out of time here.
We're running out of time.
Publishing your book, you know, and that's people think about, well, isn't that the end of the journey? Well, no, that's still the beginning of the journey.
Really, early
because
middle.
Just as you were pointing out, you have to decide how you're going to present this, how you're going to put this out in the world. And there's a lot of different avenues right now. And just understanding some of those different approaches can be very valuable for those that aren't versed in those topics.
Yeah, and those things. So there's kind of three traditional ways, you know. A traditional publishing and regional publishers still exist. Self-publishing or partner publishing, which is kind of what we do. So we assist people in their process, in their journey. Maybe we help with editing. Maybe we do the production. Maybe we do the layout or the launching or the marketing or whatever. Maybe we do all of that with them. If somebody's a complete novice and they don't want to do anything or learn any of those skills themselves. So always comes back to time or money. You know, if you don't have the money, you have to spend the time. And if you've got a few $1,000s to invest, you know, you probably ought to invest that in editing and a cover or working with somebody that's going to accelerate your journey. You know, you still got to go through the steps. Yeah, you still got to go through the process. You still got to go through the steps. You can't cut out any of the steps, but you can do it faster if you work with somebody that's been down the road before. It's like anything, you know.
And with number 3, launching your book, you know, publishing it, you know, the avenues to publish, but then launching your book, you want to think about, who do I have to help me? Who can I build a street team? Can I build some messages? How am I going to promote it? What are some things I'm going to do to launch my book? So maybe you can expand on that, Liz.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And because what happens is, in those first 30 days, like if you want to be a bestseller, you want to be a New York Times bestseller, you want to be a USA Today bestseller, an Amazon bestseller, that award or that recognition is given out in the very early days, in the first 2 weeks or the first 30 days. It's selling as many copies as you can sell in that initial time frame. And with Amazon, what happens is, if you can stay up there in that top 10, 20, 50, or 100, that's who they promote. So if somebody's looking for a new book and you go in and you just say you're looking for a new Christian fiction book, well, if GE's book is number 2 or number 1 or number 10, that's going to come up maybe on their radar, and they're going to say, you bought this book, you might like this book too. If you're an Amazon, you've ever bought anything from them, you've gotten an email like that,
Yeah.
because they know what you like. They know what you bought
So
before.
guess
So,
what? There's something that you might be interested in.
right. And they didn't just randomly pull that out of 500 million books. What they did is
Yeah.
they pulled that from their new releases, their hot new releases, or their bestseller list. And
Which
so,
brings us to our next point, is marketing your book. So, marketing
yeah,
your book is just like going to the librarians conference here in the Texas Library Conference. So,
yeah, and that was just a way for us to get out in front of people, a bunch of people at one time, because they do usually have 4,000 or 5,000 people coming through. They're doing professional development. They're public librarians, school librarians. And there are so many different ways to market today with online opportunities. There's still offline opportunities, and we do talk about that. We recommend bookmarks or business cards or postcards or flyers or whatever, and signage. But we also, there are so many online opportunities that did not exist before, and social media platforms. And Russ, you can talk about that a little bit. Obviously, we're on all the platforms, but we're in the
yeah,
business. But what do you think? People
which
don't have to be on all the platforms, do they?
no, absolutely not. In fact, it goes back to the first step of identifying who you're talking to, who are you adding value to, and where do they hang out at. So, that folds into this next idea of distribution.
Right.
How the audience and the message and the value you're adding to the community is going to be positioned for distribution. And there's lots of different opportunities for distribution, and it means taking some of those distribution channels, and like Amazon, Ingram, and all of these opportunities out there, and where do you position them, how do you position them, and all of that. You can experiment along the way, but it's much easier if you can have somebody help you along that journey as well.
Right. And then, and then in addition to those online platforms like iBooks and Barnes and Noble and Smashwords and Lulu, I mean, you've heard all these names if you're doing anything in publishing at all. The other main big distribution points are the military. There's churches. Obviously everybody thinks about libraries and schools. Those are the easy ones, and bookstores, retail outlets. Those are the big three, and they're easy to do. But corporations buy books,
Yeah,
nonprofits buy books, youth organizations might buy books, depending on what the subject matter is. Church groups buy books. A lot of
any
big
kind of
church,
community,
a
any
lot of
kind of
big churches now have bookstores in their churches. Museums have bookstores or gift shops. So depending on what your subject matter is, like me at the African American Museum, there's 7 African American museums across the country. Every
Mhm.
one of those museums should be carrying this cowboy book, this black cowboy
Absolutely.
book, because they're not going to find that anywhere else. And it is about art and culture and stuff. So, yeah. So then the big bonus, we have a big bonus
Yeah, the big
chapter
bonus
here.
is technology, which,
Yeah.
when you started out in book publishing, you probably didn't have as much technology as you
Right,
do now.
didn't have any technology, I don't think, besides the telephone. We had a telephone, and it was a rotary dial,
A couple
or
of
push button.
postcards to go out.
Right? Yep, yep.
The reality is it's even more available to the people that are
Yeah,
publishing a book. However, like you mentioned, we don't have to be on every platform. We don't have to serve every tool that is out there. And I think it's important for people to understand that. Just take a deep breath,
yeah.
understand some of the things about your audience. What is your community going to find the most valuable, and where do they hang out to find that value? Because technology is available, and whether it's automation, email, websites, landing pages, podcasts, all of these things can play into your promotion, your marketing, and supporting your distribution channels as well. So don't forget that there are opportunities out there to make it a little bit easier. So having a guide by your side and making sure that that's available to you, I think, is important for people to understand. And don't get overwhelmed by it, because
Right.
we can help you with that. That's part of the adventure. Think of it as part of the adventure.
That's right. And do think of it as an adventure. It's an author adventure. It's a process. You know, you can't get upset if something doesn't go right. Like we didn't get upset because we didn't talk to as many people or get as many contacts as we thought we were going to get. We had such
I had
a
a
good
great
time.
time.
Yeah, we were having so good a time, you know. So and we have these experiences to look back on. But you know, the reason we wrote the book is because we know that it's an overwhelming process, and we wanted to break it down and put it in little short bites and bits and bytes and secrets that you can take your time and you can go with this at your own pace. We've got, you know, we've got a guide that goes along with this, a workbook that goes along with this, and we'll be sharing that with you. You can always contact us at any time here on our any of our channels. We're obviously on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, YouTube. Obviously, we want you to go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. It's at Author Adventure. You just type that in the search and you should see Russ and I's picture come up, or you'll see this gold and purple and yellow and gold, purple and red. You know, and it's so funny. We were walking across the street and there was a guy standing on the corner and he had on red and purple and yellow tennis shoes, and I had to take a picture of it. I'm not sure
Since it's your favorite color, Liz.
Yes, it's all my favorite colors were right there, you know. Yeah. But if you want to write a book and you've been thinking about it, or maybe you're even working on something, you know, get a copy of this The Author Adventure, the 5 Secrets to Success, The Art and Business of Publishing. Think about it as a business. I mean, think about how you're going to invest. You know, maybe you got to do a part-time job. Maybe you want to take 5% of your, you know, of your check every month and put it over in your publishing account. Go out and open a separate publishing account or an online account or a Cash App account or whatever you want to call it. And that be your publishing, that be your dream account, and start to put a little money in that, because, you know, like we say, you don't have to spend $50,000 or $100,000, but you maybe got to spend 200 or 500 or 1,000 or maybe 2,000 to kind of get down the road.
Yeah.
You know, and so it depends on, you know, if you want to dominate your market, you're going to have to spend a little more. You know, you may have to spend 5 or 10 or 15,000. So keep that in mind. But
it's investing in yourself is what it is.
Right. You're investing.
That's a bucket list item that, you know, a lot of people say, you know, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, and we don't want to have you shoulda all over your place, right?
Right. So. Right. That's right. Yeah. And, you know, and the time to start is now. You know, if not now, when? Because if nothing else, COVID proved to us was that, you know, we're living in different times, you know. We're not promised tomorrow, we're not promised next week or a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So, you know,
every day is a gift.
Every day is a gift. And so start today. If you haven't started, start. If you've already started, get with a group of people, you know, find some other authors, find a critique group, find somebody that you can have a conversation with that understands what you're doing. And it's not going to be somebody in your family. It may not be your best friend, because they, you know, the sad fact is a lot of times it's the people closest to us that rain on our parade or that try to stifle our dreams.
They try to keep us from failing.
Yeah, it's
failure.
Malicious.
Failure actually creates a lot of great stories.
Right, for sure. And should I? Well, I'll wait to tell our library conference, because we're over our time. You know, the security guards at the Austin Convention Center.
Oh, that's a story. Yeah, you got to give that story some more time.
They might never let us back.
And here's the thing: is we actually had we interviewed a number of the authors here, and I'm going to edit those, and then we'll bring those back on another episode so we can actually do that. I'll try to get it done for next week, Liz, and then we can actually tell a few more stories about the conference. And,
we'll tell everybody why the Austin Convention Center might not allow us to ever come back to any kind of conference, not only the library conference, but any other conference.
It was a great time, Liz. And thank you so much for all you do and
Okay.
getting it organized and putting it together. Is tremendous effort. And I had a great time there. And it
Good.
was the first time we actually met in person. So
Right, that's right. So Russ and
perfect.
I had not ever met before. We'd only been talking online here like this. So that's the other thing. You never know when you're going to meet somebody and develop a partnership and develop relationships and projects together.
Yeah.
So always be open to that. Be looking for that. And if you want to do something, put it out in the universe, even if you just say it out loud to yourself,
Yeah.
because the universe has our back and it wants to support us. And whether you call that God or spirit or universe or whatever it is, when you take a step out boldly, something meets you,
Yeah.
something starts showing up in your life. So we look forward to seeing you next week. We're here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're always talking about this fun author adventure. Go get that book on Amazon or send us an email or follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn and just put a note in the chat and we will get one of these books to you. So have a great day and remember to be creative. Bye
Take
bye.
care, everyone. Bye.